Hello everyone, Blue Star Saber here, once again for another One Piece chapter review. Chapter 1161. My death cannot come soon enough. This chapter is basically a follow-up. This chapter is basically the last chapter of the year. Yes, I know, chapter 1170 has come out early, but it's not officially out yet, so anyone that's reading the chapter right now is reading the unofficial one. I'm not even sure if it's out in Japan yet properly, but nevertheless, this is the last chapter of the year, and I figured for the last day, might as well. Let's see, I would have liked to have reviewed this sooner, but I got a bit delayed. But nevertheless, I am here and reviewing it, and yeah, and about to give my thoughts on it, as well as talk about the plot and all that stuff. So, yeah, this chapter basically follows the events of last chapter, where we see Harold Ritzy rising up for the ranks of God's Knight, if you will. People starting to get more positive opinion of the Giants. He seems to be having a bit more of a Ritzy times come. I believe Ida had passed away. And Ritzy had learned out that Harold ended up meeting Emu, and also Shanks left the God's Knights. Without them, Ritzy, just as he was about to be promoted, which arguably he dodged the bullet, as the moment Harold became an official God's Knight, Emu commanded him to sort of like make the armies of Elbaf become giant. All the citizens of Elbaf become giant warrior slaves, if you will. Harold protested, but Emu started to take control of his body, and now he is demanding that his son, as well as his sons, which only Loki's here at the moment, and the Elder Jarl, to try and stop him, as they are the only ones that can. So yeah. How will this play out? Are we about to finally see the death, or are we about to get the build-up to the death? Let's see, we'll find out as I read this chapter. But before we begin, we've got, of course, as you can see here, this iconic double-page color spread, which you see of the Rocks pirates, all in sort of like mafia gang outfit. Rocks at the center with Captain John, Whitebeard, Big Mom, around the side, Kaido, and that fishman. In the background, you see other members like Silver Axe, Gloriosa. Let's see Big Mom's right-hand cook. Let's see the gangsters killed. Wang Zi. Let's see Shiki. And the one that has Mr. Five's explosive devil fruit. And Stussy on Whitebeard, which you can see she's trying to flirt with Whitebeard a bit more. So you've got all these sort of like just doing one of those standard iconic poses that you would probably see with the Straw Hats, and also with Rocks, you got a tiger underneath. I'm gonna admit, it's a nice little, let's see, double-colored spread. Let's see of the Rocks pirates. Probably not going to see anything like this again. Granted, you'd think Oda would do their pirate crew get up, but you know what? It's nice actually to see them do a bit of a Straw Hat pose. Let's see, and get a bit of idea of colors for some of these characters, particularly like Wang Zi has green hair. Which I wonder if that will make. No, wait, no, that was a chameleon. And let's see, the exploding guy has red hair. The fisherman looks very much got like he's got human skin, but with like flaming hair. But I'm not sure. but I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait and see how it's portrayed in the anime. But yeah. Oh, and the mafia also has some sort of bluish green hair. But yeah, it's a nice, and Rocks you see has white and blue or purple hair. Yeah, but either way, it's nice to actually see a colored spread of the Rocks pirates. Normally, Oda rarely does of other groups, but he does do it at least once. So yeah, it's nice to see here. And yeah, it's a shame that we probably won't see another one. But yeah, anyway. On to the actual chapter itself. First off, it begins with like nice and saying 14 years ago in the Sun World, where we're at Gabon's house, where Shanks is surprised that Roger has had a son, and Gabon says that's what Garp told him at the very least, and Shanks is amazed that, well, you know, he basically survived in the Marines' search for him, and thinking that, okay, I guess he's like a little brother, not let's see, and all that stuff, which he ended up being a big brother to like his, let's see, biggest admirer, if you will. With Gabon saying, well, to be fair, you and Buggy were sons to us, Roger Pirates. With Shanks thinking since he's got Roger's blood, he's likely to be in this generation's Pirate King. But Gabon points out, let's see, oops, hold on, I accidentally closed my phone page. Let me just open up. Yeah. Well, Gabon's saying that it's not necessarily a hereditary position, and sometimes those with the greatest expectations will like end up failing to achieve this greatness, which arguably it's like, oh, the referencing what happened to Ace, really. And Shanks saying, you really think so? With Gabon saying that's what makes life so fun and unpredictable, laughing at that. And then we cut back to Elbaf's castle, if you will, where you see where Loki has arrived. Let's see, sort of playing out the events of like the chapter when the flashback started. Let's see where the guard's saying, oh no, it's Loki, I mean Prince Loki and all that. Them entering inside the chambers, and we see that apparently Harold has taken out one of the guards, where the guard's wondering why he did that. He said he did that just like you said, with Howard thinking, why did I cut down my own guard? Let's see, thinking that his body's moving on his own, and it seems like he's feeling that it's let's see, his body seems to be following Emu's orders to eliminate those who would stop him, as Emu's orders were to form an army. And Roxy's starting to think Howard starts to realize he's incapable of fighting back, and wondering if it can even alter his own thoughts, and thinks for the rest of his life, thinking of the symbol, and says as long as he's lived, he will be a threat to Elbaf, so he needs to die. Thinking that all his efforts in the end was a waste for nothing, 140 years of his life down the drain. Let's see. And thinks that his death cannot come soon enough, so he orders his guards to kill him and all that stuff. And he refuses to let Elbaf be enslaved. As he says, hurry before I'm taken over, with the guards confused, well, I think one of them being the captain. And this is where Loki arrives, and this seems to be where the guards finally are acting on the orders, where we finally learn that the reason why they were stabbing him is because he ordered them to kill him. With Loki and Zhao being confused what is going on, and Howard realizing he's truly become immortal, as we see the black shirt of him being stabbed all over, as he talks about how he can't feel his body recovering. His body now draws at the sword, and the controlled Howard is now striking at his guards. Let's see. Thinking to himself, what can he do to die, and asking someone to help him, and his reactions here shock, let's see, both Loki and Zhao. And then we cut back to Shanks, as Shanks is explaining how both Howard and him have like the lowest shallow of convenience, with this apparently great one in Marijwa. So it seems like Shanks is somewhat aware of it, confirming that. And talks about even with this just Shallow's covenant, they're saying they can't resist long as let's see, as they are within that apparently being's range, where he calls it a freak. With Gabon thinking that's such an odd power. And Shanks going like, once they were far enough, let's see, he finally had a chance to talk openly, where Howard recognizes him as, oh, so you were the redhead pirates and all that stuff. With Shanks thinking that Howard was delighted about the deal he made to Elbaf out of the government once he was in the Guards Knights. But he thinks that he has to do that inside the next level of convenient, and Gabon saying, is that a bad level news? And you see in the background Gabon's wife, if you will. Let me just double check what her name was again. It's been a while. Giant One Piece. Let's see. Yep. Need to just I believe her name. Ripley. And a younger age son of Colin. Granted, he's 6, but probably I think he's a toddler at this point, so he should be 3 or 2 in Elbaf years. Yeah, I think it's 2. So Shanks goes on to explain that the Covenant and the Holy Guards gain superhuman strength and an undying body, as well as the ability to generate an abyss and means traveling long distance. But in exchange, they are not able to defy the Great One's orders. And and his voice will reach you within any range. And Shanks goes on saying, so if he agrees to join the Covenant, Hal will be forced to do what those people say. And knowing how, greedy they are, he can't imagine that it would be for the good of whatever their promise they gave him. And thinks that Hal shouldn't really join the Guards Knights. But before that happened, before he could finish that sentence, and he didn't really say Guards Knights, let's see, they hear a huge clash of hockey, and we see that it's none other than Loki and Howard's clashing, confirming that Loki does indeed have Conqueror's hockey, which I think everyone expected, with Loki wondering what's wrong with his father, saying, thinking like, what am I supposed to react to first? With Loki going like, you haven't died, saying like, the fact you haven't died with all those wounds, or that fact you're trying to kill everyone, including him in the castle, and wondering where all the strength is coming from. With Zhao going like, what has happened to him? Why come back to your senses? With another giant saying, guard to the royal chambers, help stop the king. He's been taken by madness. With some of the guards who were there, a bit confused at first, thinking it might be Loki as they try to save the king. And then eventually Loki and Zhao able to restrain Howard, asking him to explain himself, with Howard going like, he's made a terrible mistake, telling that to Zhao particularly. Telling them that he will very soon lose his mind, and he tells Loki to do what he says. He wants him to tell the people of Elbaf exactly what happened here. They killed his own guards, that he used joining the world government as an excuse to do their dirty bidding, and ultimately it led me to be what he is now. And he's about to hand over the people of Elbaf to the government to be their slaves in battle. With Loki confused, what you mean by tricked? Of him saying they had never any intention of honoring his request, with the guards just confused by what His Majesty is saying, as Hal declares to Chief Zhao to find the treasure at Elbaf and give it to Loki, which confuses him, and saying with the power of the god, I will be unstoppable, and saying Elbaf will be enslaved by the government in this very antithesis of his dream, and saying this makes him the worst king in the history of Elbaf. So he asks Loki to kill him, and take the throne and all that stuff, and tell the people how full of a king he was, and kill him and be the hero they need, and saying once he's dead, his reputation will mean nothing to him, so all that matters is Elbaf's future. As you can see him crying, with Loki going, you really do all this? And he begs Loki, saying only he can do it, and at this point, Howard's become truly possessed, and that's striking down all the guards within his range, killing a lot of them. As the possessed Howard looks around, as Howard announced there are criminals within the castle, which confuses some guards, and he orders them to seal the front gate. As they do so, not understanding that he's being possessed. One guard goes like, you killed them all! You're not the real King Harold! As he stabs for the neck. With Howard then saying, but I am Howard, and now a vassal of the Great One, as you see him regenerating. As he declares, no one shall escape to tell a tale of what happened here, and he kills the guards. And one guard says, hurry, run, which might be the sort of guard we saw a bit earlier, telling, hurry, run, I think in the flashback, and realize it's Howard that's squishing him. As Howard, the possessed Howard declares he will give this country to Emu, with Zhao telling Loki to hurry up, with him going like, why do I have to eat some devil fruit? Won't he be able to swim anymore? And goes on like, his father seems to be a different person, with Howard saying, don't you dare eat that, Loki, it belongs to me. With Loki going like, you just told me to eat it. Zhao stabs Howard in the back and thinks that it would really be the end of the world, Howard. And he tells Loki to do it and make sure Howard doesn't get the fruit. And then we see that it was in fact Harold that stabbed Zhao in the forehead thing, which should actually kill him, but he survived due to his helmet, which is just Oda's silly way of making sure a character survives. But yeah. With Howard saying that you actually gave me that blade, so it's now you can have it back. With him saying you'll eat the fruit and take Ragnar for himself, saying that Loki cannot have it, and this is where Loki is now running as more guards try to stop Harold. And this is where Gaban and Shanks come in, striking him, so it shows that they actually know more than they sort of like Gaban let on in the beginning. With Zhao shocked by Gaban's presence, and Shanks asking Zhao what happened to him and all that stuff, and as he said the helmet saved his life. He tells him to please stop Howard. Don't let him go after Loki. With Gabon saying, based on what you said, it looks like the worst case scenario has come to pass to Shanks. With Shanks trying to say, Howard, look around you, come to your senses. With Howard saying, Shanks, this undying body is a wonderful thing. I feel superior to all of her life. With Shanks going like, damn it. Is there any way to break the control over him? And then we see Loki entering the door of the forbidden chest, revealing that he's the one that entered it. And realize that, this must be the forbidden, devil fruit. And just as he's about to try and get it, Ragnar the Hammer flies and hits Loki in the face, ending the chapter. So, with that said and way, now for my sort of overall thoughts. First of all, we get at the beginning of this chapter, we get confirmation that, which I was a bit surprised by, that Shanks did not know that Roger had a kid. Now, then again, it probably makes sense because when Shanks had his last meeting with Roger, he probably Roger probably didn't tell him he was going to have a kid or something. So I suppose it makes sense. But I do wonder if the knowledge that Shanks learned that, okay, Roger has a kid, okay, I must get there, and he must have also learned about the Nika fruit things. And so given the fact that Shanks thinks that since Roger has a kid, he must be the one to become the next Pirate King and decide to get that devil fruit to him, which, I think many people theorize that Shanks originally came to Luffy's island to get him the devil fruit, but to get Ace the devil fruit, but of course Luffy took it, which arguably makes sense, but of course Shanks probably just thought when he met Luffy, you know what, I think this kid is meant to have the devil fruit, and decided to, give it to him. So I think that works. And oh, damn it, I've realized that my Ace novel's been damaged, but sorry. I should really be careful with manga volumes. But yeah, anyway, I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. A bit distracted. So anyway, where was I? Yes. So I do like how this seems to be tied into why probably Shanks probably about just a year, I think, or two, just before meeting up with Luffy, if you will. So I think this probably more explains why Shanks arrived in East Blue at the time that he did. So if that theory of him trying to give the fruit to Ace is correct. So but I do like how Shanks seems to think like, okay, so Ace is probably like a little brother. Roger's kid's like probably going to be a little brother to him, which arguably Gabon sort of confirms that both Shanks and Buggy were like sons to Roger pirates. So which Luffy doesn't seem to think that Shanks and Buggy had that close of a relationship, but I think he's going to be a bit of a surprise when Shanks actually says, no, actually I feel Buggy is like a brother to me. So, and all that stuff. And it also probably explains why he was very protective of Ace, because, well, arguably Rogers being his Roger being Ace being his captain's son, but also he does seem to have like a big brother like protection, which arguably, who knows, perhaps he has the same for Luffy, but I do like that Shanks sees Ace as that kind of way. Granted, I do, speaking of the Ace novel, I think, which I think the manga I've got, let's see, the second volume, you do have I believe you do have a Shanks asking Ace, are you Roger's son? But Ace tries to dismiss that, so Shanks doesn't go further on it. But I do believe he did. He might have talked about how Roger was like a father to him, so it's like, that probably makes us brothers in a sense, but it is the sort of tragedy of like Ace's loss, if you will. So it is confirmed that Shanks views Roger as a father. So for those who doubted it, but But I do like that. While Shanks thinks that because Ace has Roger's blood, that probably means he's the next Pirate King. But Gabon says that it's not necessarily a bloodline thing like your standard king title. And even points out those with the greatest expectations could end up being the ones that doomed to failure, which, to be fair, did end up happening to Ace because he was the one targeted by the Marines, and when they got the chance, they executed him. and as a result, he was taken out before he got the chance to ever reach his full potential, if you will. So it's a clever nod that Oda's making there that points out that the Pirate King title isn't hereditary. Granted, there's a lot of, many of the main characters these days seem to be from strong bloodlines, since Luffy's from the hero of the Marines and the most wanted criminal in the world, the Revolutionary Dragon. But, you know, just because Roger had the title of Pirate King doesn't mean his son is. So, and that's going to be Luffy, the next Pirate King, though depending on who you ask, Buggy or Blackbeard might get it just before Luffy, but who knows? So I do like that little bit there. And I do like how during this whole Shanks stuff, he's explaining that we get a bit more of an idea of like the Guards Knights system, the contract. The lower one is the bare minimum, but let's see, it still means you have to obey what Emu says. And the closer you are to Emu, you know, the more likely he's able to control you. But the further away, the lower ones, the ones that are not full Guards Knights yet, the further away, the more freely you get to speak, which Shanks does, and he ends up being more of himself when talking to Harold. And it's like, and Harold did recognize Shanks as a member of the Redhead Pirates, showing that he had his pirate crew. It seems like for like a year, he stopped being a member of the pirate crew for a bit, and he joined the Guards Knights to do whatever mission he was, which is probably information to find the Nika fruit. And talks about and explains that once you become a Guards Knight, you get extra strength and immortality and ability to, teleport in the abyss, but you end up having to obey the Great One's demands. So Howard will have to obey whatever order they're given, as we're now seeing when some Emu demanded that he created, all giants to be made as warriors for Elbaf. So, So Shanks is pretty much spot on that. Howard had no choice but to obey the thing, and he thinks it's a bad idea. Of course, Shanks is too late to do this, and indirectly, him not becoming full-on Guards Knights led to Howard to become that path. So yeah, granted, maybe it would have been smart if Shanks told Howard what would happen down the line, but I guess he didn't probably thought he had a bit more time, and probably didn't realize that he or Harold would likely to be promoted to Guards Knight next. So soon after the last mission. So, I think if he perhaps knew that, he probably would have warned Harold much sooner as he's explaining all this to Gabon. But I do like how you see like his wife and kid in the background, in the hut thing. So, yeah. But anyway, I do like how we see with Harold, when a guard, at first he's his body's moving against his will when a guard tries to restrain him and he cuts him down, and he thinks, why did they do it? He wouldn't do that, and starts to realize, okay, I am now officially starting to lose control. And realizes that his thoughts might be slowly being corrupted by the king. And I do like how we see some of those pretty panels of like when Loki and Zhao are arriving and getting the context of what's actually happening, such as the reason why the guards stabbed him is because he ordered the guards to kill him, as he thinks as Howard thinks, the longer he's alive, the more likely he is a threat to Elbaf and its people, as he will have no choice but to command Emu, so he must die for the good of the nation. So I do like that. He gives the orders to the giants, and they do that. And then, of course, there's even that one nod of like that one guard saying "run" and getting stomped on. And I do like how you even got the same captain of the guard when you had Loki as a baby, so giving orders and all that stuff. So yeah, I do like how you're seeing all the confused expressions, and then Loki's and Zhao's being shocked by what Howard does to like all those guards, and they immediately trying to restrain him, trying to get some sense in this. And I do like Howard's sort of little speech telling them that he's being controlled. He made a mistake. He thinks that all his efforts have gone down the drain, which, to be fair, they haven't, even though for the 45 years of his life, technically has not all been vain, but unfortunately, he just went down too extreme that he trusted the wrong people and ended up getting a deal with a devil that he did not actually fully understand. So arguably why he views himself as the worst king in Elbaf's history, as he seems like he feels like he's just given them the people to become slaves to this evil menace. He actually led them to a better path, but he just made some mistakes along the way. And he probably And arguably, probably, and he is, of course, why he's remembered as a good king, but arguably, people don't know the full truth. Arguably, because Loki probably lied to protect his reputation, as we see here, despite the fact that Harold ordered him, kill me, become the hero, Loki. You need to be the hero. I must be the villain. Tell the truth. He was a fool of a king that tried to do his best to kill the gods, did dirty deeds for the government, all for the act of being peace, only to be tricked and become their weapon of mass destruction. Tell them that I'm the worst king. You must become the good king. They must become the hero. But arguably, let's see, one reason or another, Loki decides not to do that and decides to betray himself as a bit of a villain. So I do like how we see that. I do like a sort of like how now I don't see how Howard seems to view himself, but he's not necessarily completely right. Let's see, because arguably he did make Elbaf a nation, but he did many mistakes that cost him in the end. So yeah, that's my overall summing of Harold. But I do like how he feels like Loki is the only one to do this, and let's see, in order to get the devil fruit and all that stuff. So yeah. I do like how we got an explanation of like, okay, it was actually Harold that stabbed Giles, which I think was probably kind of obvious at this point. So it wasn't actually going to be Loki. And it was also interesting that the sword that, let's see, Harold stabbed Giles with was actually given to him by Giles. But I'm not sure if it's one of the great blades, but it is a very effective sword, it seems. But granted, yes, Giles surviving for the stab in the head is kind of ridiculous, but clearly Oda, he doesn't necessarily make wounds that should kill characters actually kill them, and clearly he wanted to make that as a bit of a plot point, maybe perhaps for Giles to not remember all what had actually really happened. I am curious to see if we're going to get that blade removed from his head, and maybe Chopper, is able to keep him alive, and then he will come back to remember everything and then tell the truth to the Elbaf. But yeah, but nevertheless, I do feel like the truth of what happened here will be exposed eventually, particularly when Luffy tried to save the day. But at the moment, it's the only select few know, and it turns out Shanks and Gaban are one of the others that know somewhat of the truth, as what Shanks told Gaban. They can pretty much summarize that the worst case scenario has actually happened. I am curious the reason why Gaban just talked about, said to certain words to Hadrunan about, okay, we've noticed the presence in the castle, but feels like, but he was actually there. I don't know if he was being a bit vague to let Loki explain himself, or this is just Oda doing a retcon, but if I had to guess, it's probably just more being a bit, just being a bit vague so they don't get the full details of the flashback before the actual flashback. At least that's why I'm assuming. But I do wonder, now that it seems like Shanks knew the context of what happened inside the castle, so I wonder what exactly happened between him and Loki when apparently, because from what we can tell, Shanks defeats Loki and he becomes an official Yonko. Now, did Loki let him win, or did him and Shanks actually go in a full throwdown throttle? I am curious about that. Granted, we'll admit, with the whole guard contract thing and the symbol in his arm, this would lead to many wonder if he deliberately had his arm cut off, which I don't think Oda was thinking that far ahead, and maybe that'll be a retcon thing, but we'll have to wait and see if him sacrificing his arm was a deliberate attempt or perhaps just a lucky coincidence. Now, granted, we have no idea of the symbol, even if the arm itself is completely bitten off, if that mark is still on the person or not. I'm not sure. We have to wait and see in that regard, but it's very likely, Shanks might have more ties to Emu than we thought, as at least Shanks seems to be at least aware that Emu exists to some extent, and not knows the full contents of it fully. But yeah. Nevertheless, I do like sort of the action pieces you see with Howard slicing down guards, Shanks and Gaban arriving, Loki and Giles trying to restrain, and all that. I think the action pieces are there. I do like how we see that, Howard has been completely possessed by Emu, but it's more like an evil version of Howard, probably of somewhat like what he might have been when he was younger, but much more menacing, if you will, as you see him killing down the guards. He's been lost completely to Emu's control. And I do like how it's a bit of a different control compared to, say, what happened with Rocks with the Dummy Reverse. It seems more of like what's happening with Gunko, or not yet see fully Emu speaking through Howard, but more of like Howard becoming more like obedient servant kind of thing. Let's see. So I do like seeing that. And what else is there? I do like how when guards are confused by what's going on. Either obeying the king's orders, realizing the king's possessed, trying to stop him, but only to get killed, or thinking that Loki might be behind this. But the more once they encounter how they get an idea of what's going on. So I thought that was pretty good. So yeah. What else? Let's see. What else have I covered? Oh yeah. Let's see. Trying to think. Oh, and I also like how we got confirmation that Loki was actually the figure trying to get the chest. We thought it might have been. Many people thought it might have been a God's Knight like Shamrock or Fig Garland, but nope, it was actually Loki. And it looks like the Hammer Ragnar is attacking him, which implies that the Hammer is somewhat alive. Granted, I know what the next chapter is, but I'm not going to say what it is for this review, in case anyone who ends up watching this or listening to this has not yet read the chapter. But yeah. So I do like how it ends with a cliffhanger with the Hammer attacking Loki. So yeah, overall, a very good chapter. I enjoyed it. I hope that everyone else who read this chapter enjoyed it. If I had to give it a score, I'd give it, say, a 9, maybe 8.5 out of 10. Let's see, Shanks showing us that Shanks somewhat learned about, Ace being Roger's son. Let's see, a little commentary about Ace's lost potential and why he probably failed due to expectations upon him. Let's see, learning that. Let's see the different stages of the God's Knight symbol, why you get more power if you're becoming like a full-on Holy Knight, which does beg the question how strong God's Knights are without Emu's busts and all that stuff. But let's see, and how much power he actually gives God's Knights and even the 5 Elders to some extent. But then again, I suppose he would make them stronger. But also, the more once you become official God's Knight, you will have to obey Emu's will, which shows just how much of control he has. With only Shanks having a little bit of only having the first stage. While if more further away he is, the more free he's able to do what he wants. But the closer he is, he'll have to obey Emu's orders. So yeah, we'll see how that plays out with Shanks down the line. And I also like how we had to actually get to see Shanks fighting with his proper left hand, I think, as that was the one as he was left-handed originally. So we've got that. Also, Harold's own realizing that what mistakes he's done, and he views himself as the worst king, even though he probably isn't, and wants Loki to be the hero, which probably leads to Loki lying, of course, to protect Harold's reputation. And seeing Harold become possessed, and seeing how Jarl got his wound, and Loki going for that devil fruit. So yeah, overall good stuff. For those who end up listening to this review, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed the new year. But for now, I am Blue Star Saber signing off. Thank you everyone for listening, and goodbye. And Happy New Year to you.